successful half marathon for you? Give us the details. What was your latest running project?
Latest running escapade. Well, yeah. So there. I first off, my challenge last year I wanted to run my first half marathon. Mission
Mhm.
accomplished. I did that. Got a pretty good time for what I wanted, and I felt good about that. I was gonna follow it up with a half trail marathon that I had to cancel because of COVID. I
Right.
got COVID, so they let me postpone that. But then
Fair enough.
as I was recovering, I was reading through the different races and stuff, and one of the races I had done was part of what they call the Triple Trail Challenge, which is a 22K, a 30K, and a 36K trail run. And so I was like, well, that's my goal for 2023 is, I want to run that challenge and get me a hoodie because you get a special hoodie.
And the challenge is to run all three. Is that what the deal is?
All three over the year, right?
Okay.
You don't have to win. It's just,
Oh, that's a lot of work for a hoodie.
well, it's like it's the gamification of it, right?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, it's already the gamification of running to have races, right? Because I
Yeah.
mean, only 3 people or whatever officially win, but they give medals to everybody for completing it. Because
Yeah.
it's
Plus you run as a group and there's like a
it's
collective,
it's
just
an
like a nice
accomplishment.
feeling about it, right? Sure.
But the Triple Trail Challenge is like limited to only 100 entries, and I was
Oh,
like,
really?
I got to do this.
Yeah.
So I signed up for that, and then my one of the places close to me is Manly Dam. They've got it's like a nature preserve, and it's it's got a dam and a reservoir behind it,
Uh-huh.
and I go run around that every other week or so, and it's like 10K, 12K or whatever. But they just had kind of a uh, I mean, it was an official race, but it was pretty low key. They're like, oh, we'll have the summer trail series, and you can sign up for that and do all 3 races, and it was cheap. And so I was like, okay, I'll sign up for that. Well, the last race in it, they were like, if you want to move to the longer distance, you can do the 21K. So I was like, I'll do that too.
They
And
stepped
I
up.
didn't, and I didn't happen to notice that it was the week before the first leg of the Triple Trail Challenge, which meant over a period of 6 days, I ran a 21K and a 22K trail run, and a marathon's 44. So, if 21 is essentially a half marathon, 22 is officially a half marathon.
Right.
So yeah, I did those back to back, and the 21K was okay because it wasn't a lot of elevation change. I mean, it had 400 meters
This
over
is
the
true for
whole.
anything outside. Anything you do outside, you're like lower or what am I trying to say? Less elevation change always means easier, right? It's always
Yes,
like anytime you go somewhere and they're like, this doesn't have very much elevation change. You're like, this is good. That's good for me. I guess it's bad if you're trying to
exactly. The half marathon I did last year was like around a lake,
yeah.
and
Oh, perfect. Right.
it
Yeah.
was yeah, it
Yeah.
was like 50
Flat. Yeah.
meters
Mhm.
change over 21 kilometers. It
Yeah.
was
It's like
nothing.
nothing.
Yeah, but this one was like 1.1 kilometers of vertical.
Oh, okay. All right.
And it was literally just like up and down and up and down. And like towards the end, the damn one was it didn't break me. I was tired, but towards the end, I couldn't raise my arms anymore. Like my shoulders were so like dead that I was just kind of like running with my arms down. I was like, how the hell? And then
Why are your
afterwards,
shoulders extra tired? Is that like my
well,
miss? Like
because you're
what's?
swinging your arms as you're
Oh, I
running.
see. Just
You know,
just the natural movement of running. Okay.
I
All right.
guess it was weird because I'd never had my shoulders get tired.
Hmm.
So obviously I need to cross train that a little more. But yeah, it was brutal. Because I afterwards I was like, this is the most tired I've ever felt in my life. Um,
I have a question. Do you think this is affecting your sleeping? Should we go back to go back to your
uh,
sleep test? Is this what it is? Is this why you can't sleep at night? All this
no,
vigorous running?
no, it's not. I don't really think about running too much while I'm sleeping, and it's because my brain is thinking about other stuff.
Yeah.
So
Well, do you like it? Do you enjoy it? Maybe for everyone, for all, have you always? I don't think. Have you always been a runner? I don't know.
Not always. No, I started running probably about 20 years ago.
Okay, so it's been a while.
And
It's
I've
part of
been
your life.
ramping up the mileage lately.
Huh.
So yeah,
Now,
last
are you at the
year.
stage of running where, like, if you go for some prolonged period and you can't run, or just, or
No,
you haven't run, that you feel like, you're sort of anxious,
no,
like
no,
you
no,
you
no.
want to run, gotta get it in, that kind of thing.
Like, do I, like,
Yeah, like, I don't know. I feel like runners, like, becomes a habit. Like, if some runners are just like I have a friend of mine who's like a pretty avid runner, hurt his knee, long story short, and he was like, couldn't run for like 8 weeks, and it was just like, I think for him though, it's like kind of part of his identity, right? It was just like, I think he couldn't. It was like just really like, I don't know. To me, it's like, oh, I can't run for 8 weeks. Great, like, have a reason, but I don't know. But like, I think that's a lot of habits are like that though. Like, once it kind of becomes core to you and it gets taken away. So, are you at that level, or are you just sort of someone who's like doing it?
It is kind of habitual. It's I definitely have times where I'm like, that's it, I gotta go run. I just, you know,
Get out there.
I'm done. I gotta go. The mountains call to me or whatever. But
Like it. Like it.
yeah, so but like I don't really like fall out of running shape very fast, so that's good. You know.
It's good.
I'm
Well,
not I'm not fast, so it doesn't
now we're
matter.
all jealous, so it's like, you and your 8% body fat, I like it.
I'm not quite that, but
You're in good shape though. Don't you don't have to pretend. So,
well,
all
clearly
right.
not my arms.
Speaking of habitual, it's time to do
It's
another
time.
podcast.
It is.
Are you excited? Are you ready for these topics today? If you did your you
I have
reviewed
looked at it. I
you
have
did
looked at
review
it.
last night. I was very proud of you. And you
Um,
pointed out, you're like, this is old. I was like, great. I didn't even see. I don't know why. I guess I'm just a drone. I just paste the links in there, and I was like, you're like, this is a year old. I was
well,
like,
I read it, and
I
I was
didn't
like,
even
"Oh,
know.
this is interesting." And then I caught the date on it. It's like, because what happened was I read it, and then I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." And then I went to Kubecon Slack. I was going to post it in engineering, and I searched to see if somebody had already posted it,
Oh,
and
okay.
it had been posted like 2 years ago.
Years ago. Okay. Still, it was cool though. I mean, it's still pretty big though. So, well, I guess
Oh
there's
yeah,
something
yeah,
like
yeah. That
7,500 Kubernetes nodes or something by ChatGPT, OpenAI rather. And it was cool. I was like, oh,
yeah.
sweet.
Well, it was
So,
pre-Chat GPT.
yeah, you're right. I guess it was. It was just the company. It was
Yeah.
well, it's funny too. It's kind of it contrasts so much with some of the cloud talk we've been having, where it's like you could kind of only do this. I don't know, not only, but like it's a lot easier to do all that stuff in the cloud. Like, spin up
Oh
all
yeah.
those instances and then take it all down. It's like that would be a hard private cloud problem. So
Yeah. Well, all the GPUs they're using, that is crazy expensive.
yeah. Yes, it is. But that's okay. I'm not worried about it. They have a lot of money. They have a good partnership with Microsoft.
They'll be
It's
okay.
gonna work out. Although it's still like it does every occasionally when I still try to get on it, it's like we're at capacity. So it's like people are using it, man. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I use it.
I love it.
I had to I had to write something very similar to something I'd already rewritten, or that I'd written, like, hey, I wrote this a month ago. I need to just regurgitate it with
Yeah,
different
rewrite
words.
it, make it more clear, just something like that, right? Or make it more concise.
Yeah.
So rewrite it in this voice. I'm like, I love it. I mean, I can't wait I guess we'll just get into the show. I'm just 100. I'm all ready for the Copilot for everything. I want Copilot. I just want it like in all the apps. Just like, yeah, in all. It's like, bring it
Well,
on, man. Bring on Copilot. Make me smarter. Make my writing better. Teach me Excel. Like, it's just bring everything. I don't know. I know there's all these downsides, but I'm like, right now, I'm just like, I want it everywhere.
I feel like it's about where I wish voice technology was. Like, I could talk at about the same rate and would be able to spit out that stuff. But the problem with like voice recognition is usually it does something wrong and you have to like stop and correct yourself and you lose your train of thought. If I could
Mm.
just like, verbally rant for a minute and then let it like transcribe that, then I'd have what I want to edit.
Yeah. True.
And if I start typing, my typing is not fast enough to keep up with, like,
Yeah, for your thinking, right? Yeah, totally.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's what they need, is just like the voice thing where you just, chat at it, with voice for 2 minutes, and then it's like, let me summarize what you just said. And
I
then,
love that.
spits that
That's
out.
even
Yeah.
better. I mean, God, whatever. We got to get it done. ChatGPT, get it done. All right, you ready to jump into the show?
So these articles, like,
what do I do? What do
I
you
like the GitHub biz model.
Okay.
The tech stocks, I'm like, whatever. The Twitter recommendation algorithm, I think that's entertaining.
Okay.
Because the PRs are especially good. I don't really care about this Broadcom VMware stuff.
Okay.
Nutanix.
All right, we'll go over. I'll go over. We'll go over them quick.
I mean, we could talk about them. I don't really have anything to say about an executive leaving for misdeeds.
Okay, we'll hit it like real quick. I'll just plow through these things because I think it's worth touching base on just because all the VMware stuff.
I do.
What else you want to move anything up? You got anything else?
Well, the Google cutting back on staplers. That's class.
Do we? Does that put that in? Yeah, that's in here, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll have plenty of time to talk about
relevant to your interests. It's $38 billion for Saudi Arabia. Good luck with that.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. Boy, we're really that Italy thing's in there twice.
Let's see. It was two different articles, but we can take it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just in the redundant.
Yeah.
All right, let's do this.
Note of the timestamp, and then we'll get going. Well, Matt, this week we can definitely determine that no one at GM, that being General Motors, listens to software-defined talk. And the reason I say that is we hit on it last week. And I think last week, one of the things we talked about in relationship to Docker was like, you can't really take things away. Taking things away just angers people, especially if they're either perceived as free or low value. So this week, it has come to our attention that GM is going to take away Apple CarPlay and Android Auto for all their future electric vehicles. So the reason they're doing this is, from the article here is, quote, "This is all about creating a better, more integrated experience for future EV customers that will give them all they need and more over time," end quote.
And more.
And I was thinking to myself, and I would like to get your opinion, of all kind of the forced software we're forced to use, I guess, in our lives, right? That the infotainment that comes with vehicles may be, probably top 5 worst software that we are forced to interact with on a daily basis. And I was going to quickly recap, in the lifetime of where I've actually owned a car, or like someone, let me use a car. I was going to quickly recap the systems that we've been forced to use. So, and I'd like you can kind of chime in, tell me where you kind of pick up on this car journey. First car that I drove on a regular basis, tape deck only, right?
Yeah.
But of course, this was during the time when everyone was getting CDs, which I know is probably crazy now. So what you had to do is you got like a Sony Discman, and then you could, if you were really fancy, you could put it on some type of like, leveling, shock absorbing stand in your car, right?
Yep.
And then you would take essentially a tape adapter, right? So you plug it into
I
your
had
MP3,
that. Yep.
You put in the tape adapter, and you could play CDs through the tape into your car. So that was like phase one, an absolute hellish experience. It didn't really work. The CDs would skip. There were numerous problems with it.
Then your car would get broken into, and they stole my Discman.
Yes,
and
I
my
had the same thing.
CDs.
Broke a window, they steal the Discman, they take your CDs, and it didn't even work that well. So that was sort of phase one, right? Then phase two was like, well, we got to the point that we potentially got an actual CD player, right? So that was good, right? And but you can only play one CD at a time. So sometimes you would they put like an extra CD switcher like in the trunk. Remember this?
I had one of those cartridges.
Yeah,
like the 6-disc cartridge.
Right. But of course, around this time, MP3 players started to show up. Again, you either had to go old school, essentially a headphone jack to tape adapter, or around this time, some decks would have like an auxiliary port, right?
Yeah, that was it.
you could plug it in. And at that point, you're like, great, an auxiliary port. That was like a miracle. You're like, this is phenomenal. And that was a point of where it was like, they're actually making life better for us. Go ahead.
You know what I had though? I had an FM transmitter.
Oh, I've forgotten about that. This was like, yeah, you plugged in your, you had to plug it into the headphone jack, right? And then you would set like it to like 88.1 on your dial, and then you pick, and then so that was sort of like the poor man's Bluetooth, right?
Exactly.
And then around this time, after that was like, well, maybe Bluetooth started to show up, but it was kind of only for the phone, right? Like you could maybe take a phone call, but not not all cars rather would actually let you play music to it. So again, you were back to the MP3 player that you maybe had. I often found that the best way to do it was back to the tape adapter, right? You could basically use the tape adapter. You could hook up either what was an iPad or a prehistoric iPad and actually play some music. And because around this time, it seems crazy, like the auxiliary port was there for a while, but then it started to come off, right? People did it like the essentially car companies decided that they didn't like it because you could use other stuff. So magically, it sort of almost as quickly as it showed up, it started to phase out of vehicles.
And they started making it so the CD player could play data CDs loaded with MP3s,
files, right?
Yeah,
yes.
Which was nuts. Who would have like, here's my, my gigabyte of MP3s on a CD, and now I have to, sort through 500 different tracks with this stupid, interface.
Absolutely, but everyone remembers, right? Because this is what you would do. Like if you were sort of like, hacking the system, you would create a CD of like 100 tracks, and then you'd kind of put them in some order. Maybe you put some metadata on it. Maybe it could read it. Maybe it couldn't. Most of the time, it just had some like weird thing that said MP3. And then of course you had to like put it in there. But of course, if anyone got in the car, they had no idea what was in there. They couldn't see what was going on. So you're kind of back stuck with that, right? Then, we fast forward a little bit further, and it's like we all have some kind of smartphones, right? And we all have these different apps, and this is going on for a while. And then we're in this hell situation where maybe Bluetooth at this point is kind of working with audio, but of course doesn't really work with the phone. And then by some miracle, we have gotten to the point that like CarPlay, which is what I use, is actually pretty good. It's like, yes, you can put up the phone in CarPlay, the music plays well, and you can easily change things. You can switch your apps. You can go to audiobooks. You can go to podcasts. And the sound is really good. Because the other thing I always mentioned around the stupid tape deck adapter is like you always had to come up with like, nothing was ever leveled correctly. Either your MP3 player was like too high or it was too low in the volume. So they finally figured this out. So I never thought I'd say this. And I don't know Android Auto. I'm just going to say it's probably pretty good. I bet you Android people
I'm sure it's fine.
And it's good. But like, it's just like a natural, it's like what we want in software. Here's a natural API, a place to integrate. My car, of course, has its own infotainment stuff. It's all garbage. I never use any of it, but it's fine that it's there, right? Of course, if things in the car that have to get done, air conditioning, stuff like that, of course, I use that system. But otherwise, 100% CarPlay. So I guess at this point, I feel like we're in the golden age, right? Because it's about to all change. We're like, this is the moment where like all of this electric vehicle stuff. Obviously Tesla's already done this. There's no CarPlay. I don't know about Rivian. People said Rivian doesn't have it. And now GM, because I keep thinking to myself, GM, Honda, Toyota, the quote unquote regular car manufacturers will just give us EVs with like really simple interfaces, right? And we can just use CarPlay. But no, now it looks like they're all going to take it away from us. And we're going to be back. I don't even know what we're going to be using because now the tape adapter, there are no tape decks, and none of the iPhones or mobile devices have the, if you will, the headphone jack port. So I guess we're all just going to be stuck with Bluetooth. And I don't feel like it's too late. I think we have to rise up and start a resistance against this movement. Like the first vehicle to actually go out and offer us CarPlay to free us from the tyranny of the infotainment systems of the future. I don't know. It's never too early to start a revolution. So am I overreacting? Like, what do you think?
Well, you're going to be pretty disappointed. My 2021 Nissan has no like entertainment center. It's just got like a straight up stereo that, controls. It's got a CD player. but no like touch screen. It's still buttons and knobs.
You got no CarPlay. You got nothing. You got just like straight.
No, I've got a USB jack, so I can plug in. It's got an iPod connection, so if I charge my phone, it'll put my phone on there, and it only does like the music. It doesn't do podcasts, and it's got Bluetooth. I can
you can play
send,
that one, right?
and the Bluetooth allows me to pause, stop, and skip. That's it. So it's actually fine. But my takeaway from this article was I went and started looking at aftermarket CarPlay stuff. I was like, because I was like, hey, I think I'd like, because New South Wales has some pretty strict laws about using a cell phone while you're driving. If you when you have like a traffic offense or whatever, you get demerits here, and if you get too many demerits, you lose you get your license bumped down to a provisional plate, a P-plater, which is like you're not allowed to drive after dark, and you can't go certain speeds, and so if you get 13 demerits in 1 year, you get knocked down. A cell phone, you getting caught on camera with the cell phone in your hand is 10 demerits.
Oh, okay. So that's basically.
So you're
done,
you're
right?
2/3 of the way to losing your ability to drive for using your cell phone. So like, I've gotten a little extra paranoid about it because I knew they had cameras, and now they're using like ML, AI ML to like
to
is he holding a banana?
Or is that a video? I love it.
Yeah. So I've gotten more paranoid about it. So I was looking at the CarPlay stuff, and so CarPlay aftermarket stuff starts, $300 to $500, to $2,000, depending on how if you're going for the half height or the full height.
Yep.
So my car would be a half height because it's literally just like the little radio interface with it's just the standard stereo, so it would be okay. So I have looked at that, but my takeaway was like, yeah, GM, whatever. I would go aftermarket before I use your software, probably.
Well, that's what I worry about, though, because I don't know, the whole electric vehicles and the way that they're like wedded, the operating systems are kind of wedded to like running the whole thing. So I wonder, what kind of aftermarket options will be. But it is what I guess I should say here is that they're going to replace it. GM is going to be using a operating system built by Google, which is not Android Auto. So I don't know. That whole thing is confusing. But I guess Google is developing like a low-level, automotive operating system, which again, I don't know, just worries me in general because Google just has this like
Google does have
products.
They do have like an alternate real-time operating system that I think it's open source, that they recently have started up. And the thinking was it was going to eventually become a phone OS, but
maybe it's some variant.
Maybe it's that, but still, like, why not Linux? At this point, I don't know why you would do anything else.
Well, but I guess let me be clear. It's like, listen, I'm fine with people trying to make things better and like offering us something better. Who doesn't?
I'm just skeptical.
Like
I don't know. Yes,
this industry more so than almost anything deserves skepticism. Is just an understatement. And two, it's like no one is saying. I'm not saying add CarPlay and do nothing and like only do that. I'm just like, you already done the work. It's already working. It's like, I don't even want to oversell CarPlay. I think CarPlay is very good. I like it, but it's just, it's like we like stand here in software defined document. It's just fine. Like it does the things you want. It's very simple. It lets you play music.
What we want is things that disappear into the background.
Right. And that's kind of what it is. It's like
with no friction. That's all anybody wants.
And so the fact that they're going out of their way to take this out under the quote pretense, and I hate this. This is the whole thing where it's disingenuous. It's like, we're going to make it a better unified experience. Like, listen, if you really believe that, then just develop your better integrated experience and just leave CarPlay in there as sort of like, okay, well, if that doesn't work for you, we'll give you CarPlay. But it's like, if you will, compete on an open playing field, be like, I'm going to make, because that would be a great challenge. We're going to build such a great experience into the default infotainment system that no one will even want to use CarPlay. Okay, great. Go for it. That's a great challenge. I remain skeptical, but I'd like to do it. But the fact they're actually going to take it out just means that, like, obviously there's some kind of like, they believe that we'll get people to buy the car and then force them to pay for some like, $20 a month service. Right. And it's like, and it's going to be awful. Like every one of these, somebody in the chat just mentioned, I didn't even get to it. It was about the Ford Sync in vehicles, Microsoft Sync in Ford vehicles. I don't know if you ever experienced that one, but another weird operating.
I've had that in a rental, and yeah, it was horrible.
But you just said it the best. Like most of us have experienced these other systems in rental cars, which is another key observation for the people building cars that like, hey, maybe these things that we put in rentals, like maybe people don't really like them. Maybe they're just forced to use them. So I, for one, just want to say, GM, it's not too late. You can walk this back. Obviously, everybody's reacting poorly to it. I think we are one of like maybe hundreds of thousands of people that are frustrated by it. So maybe they'll take the feedback and be like, whoa, we took it too far. We're going to give you CarPlay. But until then, I'll tell you one thing I won't be getting is a GM vehicle. So take that, GM.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, let's enough about complaining around electric vehicles. Let's complain about some software and enterprise software, as we like to do. So 2 things I wanted to check in real quick, and then we'll get on to some more fun stuff, because it's just been, I think these things have been out here for a while. So one is Broadcom and VMware. So it's probably been like a year since the acquisition was announced. Yeah. And I felt like this was just one of those things that was just like, yeah, I mean, like
it's inevitable. It's going to happen. Yeah.
It's going to happen. So, but I guess over in the UK, the Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA, is taking a deeper look at it. And so the thing that I thought was funny about it is that the reason they give here is, quote, VMware's dominant position in server virtualization. And I guess they're worried about that Broadcom would restrict the capability of the platform to just using Broadcom silicon components. So
yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, so they're basically saying it's like, well, they're going to limit it based on Broadcom's hardware. And I was like, this is the dumbest thing of all time. Like, of course they're not going to do this. This is right. Like, it makes no sense.
They didn't get to where they are doing that, right? They got there being an arms dealer, not being,
And you would lose, like, Broadcom would lose a tremendous amount of money. Everyone would be mad. No one would buy it. It wouldn't work as well. So it's like, I don't know. This is always back and forth on like regulation. It's like, sometimes, like, hypothetically, I'm always like, yeah, we should have more people involved in regulation. Then we get like the European pop-ups for like the privacy, the cookie pop-ups. And then we see stuff like this and I get frustrated because what the article goes on to say is like, no, what they are worried about is that VMware customers expressed different types of fears that Broadcom may hike the cost of licenses in order to drive profits and slow development of updates and technical enhancements for products. So that's 100% going to happen. That is exactly what's going to happen.
That's what's going to happen. And I bet like the Venn diagram of the CMA's thoughts and actual customers doesn't overlap. No customer's like, oh man, now they're going to make me buy Broadcom next.
I just feel like someone from the CMA should read this. They should be like, wait a minute. The thing that we said is totally stupid, but if we just go down one paragraph, they're telling us exactly what the problem is, and it's definitely going to happen. So so if you're the CMA, you would just say like, okay, this is definitely going to happen. Now, I don't think you can stop a merger.
If the CMA like reads that, then they're going to stop all like private equity.
Right. That's what I think. But it's just like so weird. It's like, well, like the CMA, it's like, listen, just what you said. It's like, yes, this is what a private equity, or in this case, a large corporation is going to do. And if you want to stop it because of that, fine. Going to have other problems, just like you referenced, Matt. Everyone's going to do it. But there's just no reason. This other like nonsense reason they're making up is just confusing everyone. So I just wanted to make their life easier. All the CMA people, it's like, guys, we know what's going to happen here. This chip thing is total nonsense. I don't even know who's making it up. I don't know what lobbyists came up with that, but just kick them out of the room and you can decide if you want to do the merger, and let's just get it done. Right. Because, I need to take this off the list of topics for software defined talks. I want to get it done. CMA.
Think of the listeners.
Yeah, think of the listeners and think of us trying to talk about it. So, all right, so we fixed the problem with VMware. The other thing, I just have this on the watch list, so we don't even have to really talk about it, but I just want to, Nutanix CIO exits after, the whole mess of basically misusing software. So the story here is they were, quote unquote, using the evaluation software of some unknown vendor to, if you will, validate that their integration was working. So it's like, I don't know. Who knows what vendor they could have been talking about? Probably they were using the evaluation version of VMware to test that like the virtual machines were still running. I don't have any hard evidence that went down.
I'd heard it was Oracle that they were
maybe
testing.
Maybe it's Oracle.
they were using test licenses for Oracle databases on their stuff to validate things, and like, yeah, that's actually a production use.
I could be Oracle. I just feel like my feeling is it's more VMware, but like, I mean, who knows? But it's going to come out. So
Whatever, yeah, they messed up.
have this on the watch list. So this basically what happens here is they weren't, if you will, officially able to like, disclose their earnings because they basically have to figure out how they're going to address this. Right. And so it looks like they fired their CIO. That person is taking the blame for it. I don't know. Maybe that person really, who knows? I just feel like
somewhere they've got a memo that says, don't pay for software. Check here.
I mean, I always, it just feels like the CIO probably had nothing. I'm not saying nothing. I mean, hey, it was under her watch, so I'm sure she got paid well, but it's just
it rolls uphill. Yeah.
So, but I do think it's just one of those things. It's like, okay, it's been a multi-year period. They have got 60 days to respond to the NASDAQ. So like, again, probably nothing, probably something they just have to like get worked out, but kind of, I don't know. I just think it's a little interesting. It's like one of these little Matt Levine type things that sort of just sits out there as like a footnote in earnings. And then later on, boom, the whole world is ending because something happened. So I just want to say we continue to watch it. And I think, but it does make me think to myself, it did make me look at my PC or my Mac and be like, do I have anything installed here that I'm like, am I doing anything wrong? Like I did want to make sure, but I mean, for everyone listening, it's like, I don't have any evaluation software installed. So I've done the right thing.
I do like my Windows
on,
11.
Do I need to mute this out? Do I need to edit this section out? Don't commit any crimes.
All right, I'll be quiet. But I'm just saying, there's a watermark every time I turn on Windows.
It's true. That's true. Well, I actually do want to know like how this went down, right? Because the other thing is they had like a CEO change, right? I think in the last couple of years. So that was the other part. Is like I wonder if it was like back to like different executives viewing things differently. So anyway, we're just putting that on the watch list. We're gonna see what happens. And again, I'll have a special emergency episode with Matt Levine coming out if where we go over the earnings. Specifically for that. So, all right, moving on to other news. Matt, this isn't necessarily new news, but I thought it was fun for us to talk about. There's a nice thread that was posted this week about the origins of the GitHub business model. I know you kind of looked through it. You want to maybe give us a quick overview of like what is the business model they came up with and like kind of how it came to be.
So GitHub started as I'm trying to remember which podcast I listened to where they had an interview with this guy, but it was kind of a side project of a couple of folks who'd been using Git and decided, hey, it needs a better interface, and started sharing it with some of their friends. And at first it was free because they didn't really know have a business model in mind. And then they said, well, you know what we'll do is we'll make public repositories free and private repositories we'll charge some nominal amount to host them, and we'll see how that goes. And the amount they decided on was $7 because that was the least their credit card processor would let them charge.
Yeah, I think that was a funny note. And I think the whole thing here was kind of interesting because in the thread, they go through that the obvious business model, or the one that was probably being recommended to the most, was advertising. And so they were pretty adamant they wanted no ads, right? So I thought that was interesting. And I don't remember like SourceForge. Like I feel like SourceForge.
Oh my God, SourceForge was overridden with ads.
Right. And SourceForge, was it just
and malware?
I can't even remember like what SourceForge, like what could you put anything on SourceForge, or like what was it actually? What was actually up there?
They definitely host packages. So you could put builds on there. And they would you'd click on it and then it would make you wait through like a 30-second ad for your download to start. Or whatever. They would do pop-ups. They would do all sorts of like click-throughs for your downloads. It was annoying. And so SourceForge had, I'm pretty sure they had hosted Subversion, but I don't remember if they had Git. And Google had Git. Wasn't very good, but they had Git and Subversion also, I think. But yeah, when GitHub came out, what made it really different was the fact that they gave it away for free, and they greatly encouraged all open source projects. They're like, hey, we'll host you for free, and go nuts. And the kind of the turning point for GitHub was when our good friend DHH brought Rails over.
Oh, really? Was that what kinda,
Yeah.
like, got it really interesting.
That was like
I
the
didn't remember
man. Now I
that.
need to track down the podcast, but it was I mean, that was like the big inflection point was when they brought Rails over because they were Ruby developers and who had started GitHub and when they brought and so they were active in the Ruby community and Ruby had some poor tools around source control things, but but they got a lot of those Ruby projects on board early, and then Rails was kind of like right after it had taken off, they moved over to GitHub, and that was like a double inflection point for both projects. Um, so yeah, a lot of the early success of GitHub is tied to the early success of Rails and other stuff, and now of course it's ubiquitous. I think the Apache Foundation might still do some of their own hosting, but everything is up on GitHub these days.
Well, the other thing that kind of jumped out, they don't really say this in the thread, but I just think, kind of putting on more like the strategic marketing, if you will, thought around it. It was like I'm going to say they kind of fell into it, but they sort of kind of fell into like the best possible kind of content marketing. It's like essentially they were allowing anyone to put up source code, which was like making up the content that lots of people wanted to see on the site. So it kind of like, if you will, it kind of so I guess if Rails is the tipping point, it's sort of like once it gets going, once that snowball gets going and like all the source code of interesting projects is there, then suddenly you have everybody looking at it, getting used to the site. And then, makes total sense of like when it comes time to host your own project, of course, you're going to go to GitHub. Now, the other part, like I wasn't sure if I just could not remember on like, so I wasn't sure if this was like revisionist history or not, was when they made private, basically you had to pay for private repos. Like, was that controversial at the time, or was that always like, yeah, of course we need to pay because it's private? I don't
No,
know. Part of me remembers it being like, oh, people are like, why do I have to pay for private? Or am I just
no, it wasn't really. I mean, it was never that controversial. I remember, like people deciding to make things public rather than pay, which is an unintended consequence, or a beneficial side effect. But then, of course, that gave rise to the whole like people were just putting things public but not putting licenses on them, and so then it kind of gave rise to this whole like what I'm using this code that I found on GitHub, but it doesn't have a license. What's the default license? And so that was another like part of the evolution of
oh,
GitHub.
that's right. So it was like,
Yeah,
what can you do with this? And then it
what
was
can
like,
you do with this if it doesn't have a license? And you're like,
well, how does it
avoid
work
that.
now? Does everything automatically get like a license appended
The
to it
the, the
now?
wizard,
Like you have to pick
encourages you.
something?
I
Mhm.
think you can still say none, but I think it
You
might
just be
default to
like,
Apache because it's alphabetical.
uh-huh.
But yeah, I mean, of course, you could just push a whole like repository in without going through the wizard, but the wizard does have a license picker before you create a new repo.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
So,
so
okay.
they're trying to poke that up, and I'm sure they gently push you towards picking something, so there's no confusion around it.
Now, when you first saw GitHub, like back in the day, I'll go first, then you can say it's like when I first saw the site and I was kind of looking at it. Of course, like I really, as we've kind of covered before, I'm not like the biggest fan of Git, nor do I have to use it very much. So I'm not really, the person paying for it or doing it. But I remember seeing it for the first time, being like, this site is never going to work. This whole thing is totally going to. And I remember there was some like controversy around some of the executives. I don't know. I can't remember exactly what it is. They went through some leadership changes, and there was like, I don't know, there was some kind of infighting and stuff like that. But I remember thinking to myself, this company will never make it. There's no business here, and they were having all these like internal problems. So I would say 100% wrong. Obviously, they went on to be hugely successful. Now, when you saw it, were you like, what was your take? Were you like, it's going to be successful? Did you have a read on this one early, or were you just?
I thought it was going to be successful. I didn't think it was going to be as huge as it became. I mean, because it just had a very slow and steady growth. I mean, but steady was like very steady. When you grow like I don't know 20% a year, that adds up fast. And so at first I was like, this is better than the alternatives. I mean, immediately I was like, this is better than Google's code hosting. This is better. SourceForge had already turned into a dumpster fire. It's still there.
Well, I was gonna say,
But
like, I haven't been back to this, the way we talk about like it's completely gone. At least to me, it's completely gone. Like I hated SourceForge for everything. I never like. In fact, I haven't been to that site in like years. So
yeah,
that
yeah.
was it was clear that whatever they were doing was better than that. Now, the other thing that I really liked about this in the thread that I thought was good. This is a good lesson for like I don't know, call it product management or just whatever, implementing features. Or I guess we say, let me say this: pricing enforcement or licensing enforcement versus just getting people to pay. So one of the things he points out here was that when you first signed up for a private repo, you had a certain amount of collaborators, right? And you had to pay for more. And so they basically talked about, I guess, somebody was like, they were going to implement all the different guardrails to prevent that people from, abusing the system and not having, or rather having too many private collaborators. But then they decided that like it was just too much work at that point and they had other stuff to work on. So they just never implemented any checks. And they said, this is the quote. For years, you could have unlimited collaborators on private repos in GitHub, despite what the paid plan said. Almost nobody abused the system, and we instead focused on bigger problems. And it's like, that's just such a good, I feel like anything with like pricing, especially like in a SaaS, it's like, wait until you have a lot of people using it and wait until you have a lot of people that are really abusing it before you spend a lot of time writing all the code to enforce the
Oh,
restrictions. And
absolutely.
the fact that this like worked out so well, because GitHub seems like one that would be easy to abuse. The fact that they waited so long to do it is just like, I don't know, just another example of a lesson well learned here.
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved in companies that have tried to do like, call home and anti, piracy stuff, and it's just like, the number of people who are going to abuse your system versus the amount of engineering hours you have to put in to like enforce this stuff is usually not worth it, right? I mean, the bad actors, yeah, there will be some. You know, everywhere I've been has had a few bad actors here and there, like Nutanix, but but in hindsight, it's usually like, yeah, that was a lot of tempest in a teapot kind of stuff where um, these things will sort out. You'll see, hopefully, you'll have so much business traction that you'll see, where the opportunities are for um, to monetize properly without getting like overly heavy handed. But yeah, it worked out well for GitHub.
Yeah, no, I think they did a good job. And so it's just a nice success story, top to bottom. And I guess, I went out there now. It's like I went out to GitHub and it's like there's all kinds of pricing plans and they have all kinds of different options. So obviously it's grown up into a big business. I don't know. I guess in the end, I'd say, Matt, you're gonna stand in for the audience on this. Like GitHub still like obviously it's widely used. People still really happy with it. You think is there like a need for because it's been a while now. It's probably been like I don't know how many years. Like are we coming up on 15, 10, like was it 2007? So it's like, at some point it's like monitoring systems, like everyone gets tired of the thing they have and something new emerges. Like, are we getting to the point that like the GitHub 2.0 is on the horizon? There's some new version control that people want, or is it just fine?
I think for all its warts, people are pretty happy with Git. It's not the most user friendly, but it's definitely ubiquitous, and so I don't really think there's a lot of momentum for anything to displace it. I think it's one of those things where if there was some deficient feature, and there have been, there were things like handling large binaries, and so like Microsoft and others contributed code for I think it's called like the GitFS, or it's large file support inside of Git. That kind of stuff was really popular in like movie studios and game studios where they had images and things that were stored in source control. That was like one of the things that Perforce was supposedly really good at, and they brought that to Git. The UI UX problems, those are always there, right? But I think they're trying to slowly edge out, take off the rough edges, and with enough education and training, hide some of the complexity and try to put people on a fairly narrow path of Git usage. I think that will probably work. I mean, because I remember when I first started using Git, like CVS, I went like RCS to CVS to Subversion, and with Subversion, I just kind of had like a little post-it note, of just like, here are the things you have to remember. And then when I got to Git, I was like, I'm gonna need a bigger Post-it note. and of course, the Post-it note was like I had to read a book. But now I feel pretty comfortable. I understand what's going on. I have used some of the like crazier commands, like bisect and things. I don't feel like most people need to use those things. I think if you just fork, rebase, merge, you're good most of the time. And I think GitHub, the UI UX, does a good job of hiding some of that from you.
Well, I'll tell you who doesn't like GitHub is your dog, and I'm right there with it, with your dog. And so like, I don't really have it. No, Brian in the chat here, he tells us that as of 2023, GitHub was estimated to be generating 1 billion in annual recurring revenue. So that's a pretty nice business. So one, it's like kind of always surprising to hear like how much money this is. So I hope someone takes that as an action item. It's like, you know what? There's $1 billion in SaaS revenue. So why don't you build something better? Be exciting. Anything is better. Because I've always had this vision that like Git, just the version control should be accessible to like kind of the non-developer, right? Like sort of like anyone could just version any type of document that they wanted in it. And that's kind of like how simple it should be. Now, of course, like stuff like Google Docs that sort of just has versioning built into the whole system, that's even better, right? That's sort of what I guess the quote unquote normal people want. But I still think, I don't know. I guess maybe let's say it this way is like I never can seem to learn Git, so I just want something new to come out, so I don't even have to pretend anymore. Maybe the next revision of version control, I should actually be able to master. But we'll see what happens. But yeah,
they'll just keep putting user-friendly UXs over it, and you'll be fine.
Well, you saw, I chuckled when you talked about the training. It's like, well, I've done the training multiple times. It's pretty good. Like if you go through it, you definitely learn how to do it. And then you get to some point where you're like, okay, I can get files in and out, and then you just stop. That's where I always just stop, and I never learned anything else. So we'll see how it goes. All right, but congratulations to the people at GitHub. I do think it's a nice business story, and also think it is a very elegant business model. I think everyone that aspires to start a company, if you can basically, if you will, charge and have people developing content that people are interested in, charge a real reasonable rate. I mean, that's what we all want. So it's like, it's just nice to highlight somebody that's done it successfully.
Nobody complains much about GitHub's pricing. And so there are alternatives. GitLab is there. You've got the one from Atlassian, but most people are just like, GitHub, it works. Everyone's familiar with it. It's not, the pricing's fine. I can have it on-prem. I can have managed hosted. I can have it in the cloud.
You can have it wherever you want. So. All right. Well, speaking of other tech successes, Matt, you are our resident stock trader. So, and I figured, like, you know what? Everyone tunes in here for Matt Ray's stock advice. That's what comes in. And I saw this article in Axios this week, and I thought it was interesting because what they do here is they go through, and this says that tech, basically it's the largest layoffs in a long time, and they've got a picture of like all the different tech companies. We've talked about some of them: Meta 21,000, Amazon 27,000, Google 12,000. So anyway, we don't have to belabor that. Lots of people have been laying off companies, and normally that's a good sign of recession. So Matt, do you know how tech stocks have been performing as up year to date after doing all these layoffs? What would you guess?
Mine or everyone else's?
Well, we'll just say Meta, Tesla, Apple, Microsoft, and Alphabet. All these companies have had big layoffs. How have their stocks done?
They've probably all done better.
Extremely well. So Meta's up 71%, Tesla's up 57%. Hold on, Apple up 24%, Microsoft 17%, and Alphabet 15%. So just like everybody knew, they had to do all these layoffs because stock prices were going into recession. The exact opposite has happened, which is, frankly, it's good, right? I mean, I'm not like.
I think some of them you can explain, though, right? I mean,
no, hold on. This is where we're going to go to. Okay, so this is okay. So you're our stock expert, our research analyst. So we're going to basically say, why has this happened, right? We're going to offer up 3 reasons, and you can come up with your own. Okay, one is that Wall Street, actually saw the companies do all the layoffs. They're like, that's great. All you tech companies are now being very disciplined, and you've got your costs in a line. And the general Wall Street has decided we're going to reward you with that higher stock prices. That's sort of option one. By the way, I think that is total nonsense. As if like they're like, oh great, they did what I want, we're gonna do it. I just don't believe that's at all true. So that's sort of option one. Option two is it's basically a new wave of enthusiasm. We've talked about ChatGPT. Everyone's talked about generative AI. It's everywhere. So in general, there's just a lot of enthusiasm. So it's a wave of enthusiasm. We all feel like AI is coming. There's opportunities for everyone, and we all just feel a little bit better. Or so that's sort of option two. We'll call that the generative AI option. And then option three is just like, this is just as they call it, quote unquote, the dead cat bounce. It's like, no, it's just like a head fake. It's like all this stock prices are going to fizzle out, the earnings are going to go down, and stock prices are going to go down, and we're just looking at it on a weird day in April that happens to be up. So I don't know, Matt. Like, do any of those reasons do they provide a rationale to you, or do you have a Matt Ray special research bulletin you want to issue right now? For everyone, explaining your own thesis about why stocks are up, tech stocks are up.
No one should listen to me. I've become more enchanted with John Maynard Keynes' Animal Spirits. You're gonna need a Ouija board to figure out some of this stuff. It's I do believe in the dead cat bounce for Meta. I think
and they're up the most too. So that's
I feel like they made a public reversal of their big investment in AR or VR, and the stock market was like finally, but I still think they're on a declining trend long term, just because like whatever Facebook, but I think some of these companies are fairly insulated, and definitely Google's their stock goes down when they make AI announcements, because they get graded harder than Microsoft. There's just no two bits about it. It's like, they'll do the same demo and they'll both fail. And, they're like, oh, Microsoft, yours is charmingly racist. Oh, Google, yours is terribly racist. Right.
Yeah. They're definitely graded on a much higher curve, right?
Yeah,
it kind of feels like they should be dominating and they're not, and it's just kind of they're just getting penalized for that, right? So
but they're not though. I mean, they're all of these stocks are up, and I guess for the sake of transparency, I don't own any Alphabet. I don't own any Facebook. I have some Apple, too much Amazon. But they're not in your list of going up here. So get it together, Amazon.
Well, I was gonna say, like, I do think in the end, right, it's really about, earnings is all about the narrative. And I guess of all the reasons that are listed here, I just think it is one of those things. It's like, I think it's good for all of us in technology. It's like, I definitely ChatGPT and generative AI. So I just think there is just like more enthusiasm around it, right? And it just kind of feels like we don't know who's going to make the most money. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but there's definitely a feeling of like, there's tons of opportunities. All of these companies that we mentioned are in position to benefit from it. And it just like, I don't know, but I guess I kind of come back to my bigger point. It's like, obviously we're not stock pickers. We don't really know anything about stocks. This is not investment advice. You shouldn't do any, don't follow us. But I do think my core thesis of just like, no one knows anything. It just feels like as quickly as these companies are laying off, it's like, I feel like they're going to be hiring just as fast to be like, we got to roll out new ChatGPT products. Like, look at Microsoft more than anyone. They have so many different variations of Copilot, and Google's got a bunch of stuff coming out. And of course, all these startups are going there. So it's just one of those things. I think it's like, maybe it's if you will, therapy for someone that maybe did get laid off. It's just sort of like, yeah, it's frustrating, but like things seem to be picking up, and it'll probably be a few more months. But I bet you think a lot of people will be hiring again. So I don't know. That's just my take on it. So we'll see what happens. Now, we talked a little bit about Google there, but we can't not talk about Google's recent, I guess, announcement that they'll be doing some cost cutting here. And Matt, in a scene that it feels like it could be plucked right out of television, right out of Silicon Valley, Google was, quote unquote, if you will, taking away everyone's stapler, right? That was actually written up. I actually had to double check when I looked at this. This was actually originally written by CNBC. And so they basically said that staplers and tape are no longer being provided to print stations company-wide as part of a cost effectiveness initiative. So let me just pause there, Matt. Can I get your take on the staplers? Then we'll issue. There were some follow-ups, but we'll get into that. What is your immediate thought on the staplers in Google?
I'm gonna burn this place down. I mean, yes, my immediate reaction is Office Space. I mean, seriously, it's a print station. It's going to be shared by, I don't know, 30 people. I mean, how much can a stapler cost, Michael? it's I just can't see how this is cost savings. The time that marketing spent fighting this stupid article probably costs more than all the staplers combined. I mean, this is just, it's just so dumb. Maybe don't say anything and just, trim the numbers of office supplies, but you don't need to announce this kind of dumb
stuff. Now, we want to make sure that we're being journalists here. Like, in fairness, Google did respond to CNBC, right? And they did say that staplers are still being provided. So they disputed the original story, but I just feel like, okay, one, I just think it must have been great to be in the Google comms team. Like, this story comes out, it gets a little traction, at least in the tech world. There's the obvious funny Silicon Valley crossover. And it's like literally somebody in the comms group, I bet you got as high as a VP. Maybe they were like, what is going on? Who said this? What is going on? Someone send an email to CNBC that we still have staplers. Just to know that Google had a meeting, there was at least two or three people talking about it, is just fantastic enough, right? I just think that one. And in fact, if I was CNBC, I would have printed the email and be like, I'm sorry, here's exactly what Google said about the staplers, just because it is so unbelievably comically funny. So I thought that part was good. Now, the other thing that I thought was in here was there literally is a line in the I guess the Google internal comms that they sent out, is that, quote, we baked too many muffins on Monday, seen G buses run with just one passenger, and offered yoga classes on Friday afternoon when folks are more likely to be working from home, said the document. So they're just talking about things that cost back. But again, like, when you just read that sentence just like out of context, it seems totally absurd. Now, I also want to say this, is that a friend had me down one day here in Austin to go to, I went to lunch at the Google Austin facility. And I want to say this, it was fantastic. I thought the Google office was awesome. I think it's probably the best office I've been in, or at least the office I would conceivably could work in. Maybe there's something better, like New York investment banking office or something that'd be better. But I was like, I loved it. I mean, the food was fantastic.
Yeah.
So I say this as like,
they're great.
Well, I say this mostly out of jealousy. Like, I wish I was there. I wish, like, I'm working at home. You know what we just had? We have Costco chicken in my house. We don't have any. There's no one cooking anything. Not that good. But we do. I'll tell you this though, man. I do have a stapler. I can hold it up for those streaming.
I have to go over to my wife's print station, or I mean her desk, to borrow her stapler. But she has to come through my office to get to the printer. So yeah.
So it's been fantastic, though, and it really is. Now, on a more serious note, there was another person that tweeted out that they basically said that Google had let most of the people that had authored that ChatGPT paper, I guess was All You Need Is Attention, I think is what it's called, the transformer part of it. He said most of the people had left, and they both mostly raised venture capital, something on the order of $4 billion. And Google, I guess, had not, invested in any of them. So I don't know. I mean, that does seem bad. Seems like maybe they should have invested in them. Although I am more realistic around when people leave a company. It's like, it's very rare that they maintain like a relationship with the company. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, of course they could have funded them, but like, it feels like not just Google, it feels like it never actually happened. So I don't know exactly why, but it doesn't.
There's probably, there's also a bit of a, like, you got to put up a firewall with your previous employers. Be like, look, I'm not taking anything that I learned at Google. None of that is IP here. So probably if I'm, legal counsel for these people doing startups, you're like, you got to get, Google Ventures to sign off that, they're not coming after you at some point. And maybe, I don't know. I feel like that could be an angle here. But clearly other companies have understood how to do, spin out, spin ends, and sticking and investing in the people who leave. This just feels like, missed opportunity.
Well, it feels like, in a broader sense, it just feels like, all companies go through this. Like, maybe like people go through, like, at some point, everyone has like a midlife crisis of some kind. And I just feel like this is Google's, right? It's just like this whole chat GPT thing is going on. It's obviously huge and it's going to have some type of impact on their business. Of course, they have a lot of expertise. Of course, they can get involved in it. But like, like Sun wrote microsystems, it just reminds me of that. It's sort of like, how's Sun going to deal with Linux? And in the end, they didn't. It really, I remember being there kind of during part of that time, and it was just like there are all these different ideas and lots of people trying, lots of people leaving the company, and it was just very hard to kind of get everyone going in one direction, especially while the current business model was under attack. So I'm interested just from that standpoint of like, Google's had such a long run of just kind of like, almost no competition, almost endless money. So it is curious to see, what are they going to do? And I think the biggest question is like, to me, is like, when or if do they make a change at CEO? Because at some point, like that's going to be, because that's all, I guess, in the end, that's kind of what people want. They want somebody, a person needs to change. It's like the new Nutanix thing we talked about before.
Yeah.
It's like at the end of the day, it probably wasn't that person really, literally installing the software. It's like she had to go down. And I think that's maybe the question that we're going to approach here in the next, say, 6 to 12 months. It's like, do they step in and be like, you're not the right person to lead the company?
Do they need a wartime CEO?
I feel like that's such a cliche. It's just like,
it's totally a cliche.
It doesn't ever like, I remember like, I think we've been in some companies. It's always the venture capitalists that use this phrase. I'm always just like, I don't know. What are you talking about? Like, no, we just need a strategy. And we need to be able to execute to goals, whether it's like we're facing competition or not. It's always the same. So now I will say this, it's just like, sometimes you just got to bring in a new voice, right? That part I kind of get, like, you've been around, you want someone to switch things up, and maybe that would, but I always think this, like that whole connotation, having worked in companies where they're quote unquote doing that, I've never noticed any distinct difference other than someone coming in and just trying some new stuff. And if that's quote unquote wartime, I don't know why we call it wartime. It just seems stupid in general. So it's going to be curious though. It's going to be very interesting to watch Google over. I mean, it's probably the most interesting thing to watch over the next, say, year. Is like, what do they do? Can they turn it around? And I don't know. I'm just curious to see it. Now, final thing we'll get talk about this week. Matt, you put this in here, and you pointed out the thing that was funny. So Twitter open sourced its recommendation algorithm, so anyone can go read it. And you found the comment where they have I guess they have a whole section where the author is Elon. So do you want to talk about like what the algorithm actually shows and like how it kind of works, I guess, to a layperson?
Yeah. More power to them. They put the Twitter algorithm on GitHub and open sourced it so people could look. I was kind of surprised that they put the history up there too. I would have just blank slated it and said, "Here you go," because people started going through the history and found there literally was a is tweet from Elon or whatever, and elevated it, and lots of other fingers on the scales for stories. Is Republican, is Democrat, is Philippines election info. So I mean, there were things that they were clearly trying to influence one way or another. And you can take whatever conspiratorial aims you want from that. I think one of the dangers here, I mean, this is if if Twitter were still a functioning place. One of the dangers here is like, now that we've seen the algorithm, you can look at it and figure out how to game it better. But the PRs that came in were especially hilarious. There was there was one that just deleted everything. That was like, please fix Twitter, and it was just removed 5,000 files. Yes, blank slate. Blankest of slates. There was please rewrite it in Rust, of course. So there were a lot of entertaining PRs. I think I don't really think it holds much benefit for Twitter. I think there's a lot of downside here because they already have a spam problem, and letting people see how the spam engine works, or see how the engine works, lets people fine tune their spam. So I don't think this actually helps anything. But let's hear it for transparency, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to think of like, is there, I mean, maybe we'll just have to watch, like, does somebody offer up some type of like improvement that really makes it significantly better? That's accepted, of course, right? That's actually, if you
Well,
will.
that's what I'm saying. Like, who has to deal with the noise of these PRs?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. The whole thing just seems everything. I guess it's kind of back to what we've talked about for like everything about it just seems wrong, but it's like fine. I guess it just seems like whatever if it makes people feel better. But it is one of those weird things of like why they spend so much time and effort on getting it all out there. And I guess you're right. I guess transparency in itself is usually a good thing. So, but I don't know. Just like the way that I guess they openly put, like you said before, their fingers on the scales. It just seems like I don't know. I just have a lot of bad feelings
Oh yeah,
about where it's going.
this did not make me feel better about anything.
So, all right. Well, we'll
Well, it
see.
made me feel better about mostly leaving Twitter.
That's right. Well, maybe Matt, maybe you can, make some changes. You should and submit them and see if you could get. Maybe that would be some type of award for the first public pull request that gets accepted. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's already happened. Like what is it and who is that person?
Well, yeah, the PRs that I submit are usually like spelling and typos. I'm
Maybe
like
that's a
camel
good way to
case
start.
VMware correctly.
Start with the simplest, maybe just a spelling error. Like, why
Yeah.
not? Right? That would be fantastic. So, all right. Well, that's about it this week as far as the news and the topics. A couple things before we get out of here. One, if you'd like a sticker, just go ahead and email your postal address to stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com. I will be happy to send you a sticker anywhere in the world. Also, if you want to hear another podcast that I'm on, Aaron and Brian over at the Cloudcast let me sit in as a guest host with Aaron. We interviewed one of the venture capitalists, author of Clouded Judgment, the newsletter. So you should go listen to the Cloudcast if you're not already, but you can hear myself and Aaron talk all about some of the things, metrics about SaaS. So it was fun to be on the show. I appreciate doing it. And hopefully everyone will check out that episode. And Matt, conferences as well. That's what I was going to
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
Matt, are you and Cote, you still going to KubeCon EU on
KubeCon
April 18th to the 21st?
Yep, I'll be there, Amsterdam. So
You'll be there and you'll
looking
be in the
forward to it.
booth, right?
I'll be at the kiosk. I'll be at the
Oh.
open cost kiosk, and be sure to stop by and say hi. And I might recruit you to work the kiosk.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that's good or bad. Also, there's going to be a DevOps Day in Birmingham, Alabama. So that's Old Tide War Eagle, April 20th and 21st. And then there's a DevOps Day in Austin, of course. And that's May 4th and 5th. Now, Matt, what is your recommendation this week?
My pick for the week is it's an album from Bernie Worrell. So if you're familiar with your P-Funk and Funkadelic and Talking Heads and Bootsy Collins and all sorts of other like funk classics, Bernie Worrell is kind of the master of the keyboards. But this is something pretty different. It's an acoustic piano album from him. Apparently, it's the first time he's done something like this. It's just kind of a nice, quiet piano album. Riffs on a couple of standards, and I don't know. I really enjoyed it. I just saw it recommended through my feed, and checked it out, and I think it's worth listening to.
All right, like it. Always something to get. And make sure you use your tape adapter in your car.
88.1 on your dial.
88.1. That's right. The FM. Your FM transmitter adapter. I'm gonna have to go look that up, Matt. I want to see if they still sell that. That must
I'm
be
sure they do.
somewhere.
Yeah,
that's crazy. It brings back some good memories for some reason. My recommendation this week is it's a little bit long, but I thought it was worth it. I watched this video, a YouTube video. It's basically about 2 hours where I forgot the name, but the link's here. Where the author basically goes through and shows you how to build, essentially a little Chat GPT from scratch. And, so you basically need a little bit of Python skills, a little bit of familiarity with, kind of just basic math and some matrix stuff. And it's definitely dense. So it's not, if you will.
It was linked from that Steve Yegi article, right?
Yeah, I think so. And it was,
I downloaded it. I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, so it's really well done. It's really well done, and I had to watch a couple sections a couple of times to really get it. But nonetheless, it's like if you're interested in sort of like demystifying what it is, and like I guess spoiler alert, it's like everything. It's like someone's basically going to show you how they take these complicated things and turn it into all these mathematics, and of course, computers are good at math, and then you kind of see. But it was really interesting to kind of see how, if you will, the patterns, how they kind of convert them into math and these different matrix. And then they use that to kind of figure out how to do, if you will, the look ahead. And so of course they show like some very simple examples, which really kind of help me just understand it. And then of course you kind of get a sense of like, oh wow, like all the millions and millions of things that it's kind of looking through and learning from. That's the part where like your head starts to explode, but at least you kind of know what's happening. So if you're kind of interested in this and you kind of want to know more and demystify it, definitely watch it. But it's one of those things you can't watch it with your phone out. Like you need to be paying attention. So make sure you're in that kind of mood to check it out. And maybe you can then go out and build yourself the world's greatest chat GPT. And you can just tell them and the people at Software Defined Talk inspired you. That's all we'd ask for. So with that, we will talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.
All right. Appreciate everyone hanging in here this week. Brett, of course, talking about the staplers. The staplers was the highlight of the week, even though Google did retract it, and it sounds like there are plenty of staplers there. Just the fact we got it written, that's a win. I'll take it. Anytime CNBC is talking about staplers, we all win. All right, Matt, I know you got to get going. I got to get going. So thanks for all the streamers for hanging out, and we'll see you soon in the Slack. And we'll probably be on next week, probably around this time, but we never know. Talk to you later.
Yep. Bye.